Hello, welcome to Cinema Savvy, and welcome to Day 2 recap of Star Wars Celebration Orlando 2017. I'm joined with Tom Woods here today, and we're going to be giving our rundown on all of the news, events and panels that happened today. Today was a big one. It was our first proper reveal of Star Wars Episode 8, The Last Jedi. I've already done a trailer reaction to it. I've talked about the trailer at length, and I haven't really heard many of your opinions on the trailer. You've kind of given me the blunt first impression of it, but I want to go more in depth into it in a little while. So this is just going to be us going through the entire day and just discussing what we thought of certain things. So we kick off the day with the Last Jedi panel, which brought out Josh Gad, who was the host of the show, and he spoke to Kathleen Kennedy and director Rian Johnson, and it was very much the case that I would expect from these things, where he's pitching questions and they're already being very cryptic about things and not giving much away, which you can expect from these things. We were there at Celebration together last time.
Yeah, and it was very much the same thing about, they're awfully cryptic about Rogue One.
Yeah, they really were singing Rian Johnson's praise. All of the cast came out. Well, not all of them, the main ones. You had Daisy Ridley, you had John Boyega, BB-8 rolled out for a little bit, which was fun. I mean, that's an incredible piece of technology and design, so that was a bit of fun. And they brought Mark Hamill out too, which I expected, because clearly Daisy Ridley and Mark Hamill are going to be the main two in this movie. Again, they were pitching questions, couldn't really go much in depth. All I could really discern from it was saying that I think Mark Hamill said something about
he's in the movie.
He's in the movie. I think they asked him, I think Josh Gad asked him, do you talk in this movie? And he went on this long-winded answer that didn't really answer the question. It was almost like a politician answering a question on some kind of news show. And it's like, of course we know he's going to talk. I mean, you don't have to keep that secret, because even in the trailer we hear him finally talk. But he did allude to something that when Rey meets him, maybe it's the case of you shouldn't meet your idols. Don't meet the people you hold up to such high regard, because they might surprise you. So I was thinking right there, is it going to be that maybe he tends towards the dark side? But I think, and I pretty much from the trailer I'm settled on this as well, that it's just going to be a case that he's depressed and he's been in seclusion for all these years. Yeah, boo-hoo. You can't see the actions that Tom's doing right now. So before we go into your thoughts on the trailer, I want to say that they brought out, and I think she'd been confirmed already, but they brought her out onto the panel, Kelly Marie Tran, who they said is playing a brand new character called Rose, who's a maintenance worker as part of the Resistance base, and they said that they drew inspiration from
John Boyega's character, isn't
it? Pretty much. It's Star Wars, when you think about it, is a very creatively limited franchise, because it's to quote George Lucas, it's like poetry. It rhymes. We can't take chances. But they talked about that it was the Luke Skywalker character, how he was the farm boy who gets thrown into and thrust into this huge galactic adventure and becomes a hero, and they wanted to do something similar with her. She seemed really nice. She seemed really enthusiastic with it, so it's nice that she's going to be a prominent face now in terms of the Star Wars legacy with these characters. They revealed the poster, so I've talked about the poster on my trailer reaction. I'll link my trailer reaction as well in the description of this video, but what did you think of the poster? I know you can't really go loads into it, but
yeah, it's a poster, all right.
it's red.
It's red. It's got Mark Hamill's face on it, and it's got Daisy Ridley's face on it, and it's a poster.
That's all you need.
Yeah, well, many of it certainly doesn't have the same sort of epic scope of many of the other previous posters, especially the original trilogy or even the prequel trilogy. Had great sort of what was it? It
was the Drew Struzan kind of artwork.
Yeah, and it was and this just it was very simple, and it although it did kind of, I think it did work, but it wasn't as sort of big and bombastic as it was more a subtle poster than anything else, which is kind of the same for the poster of Empire Strikes Back. That was very, very subtle. It was one of the best. Well, it was the best of the three original movies. But yeah, it's a poster.
Yeah, I did miss that Drew Struzan kind of style. And I think when Force Awakens came out, the first poster they released, which wasn't the official theatrical one, but they did bring out one that was similar to his style. Most of Drew Struzan's artwork are my favourite movie posters in history. They're grandiose. They have this just epic, just tangible quality to them, and they're always ones that you want to display proudly in your room if you get the chance. I like the poster. It's definitely trying to mirror that original theatrical poster for A New Hope, where in that poster you had the sort of the very chiseled and muscular looking Luke Skywalker, which is nothing like how he is in the movie, holding the lightsaber aloft up to the air in this beam of light. Rey is doing that, so I was saying in my reaction maybe that could be a connection, a subtle hint that maybe she is some relation to Luke Skywalker and they're trying to mirror that, or his journey at least. Well, we know they're trying to mirror that journey because, let's face it, Force Awakens was pretty much a direct remake of A New Hope anyway. And then as the lightsaber goes up towards the sky, there's the face of Luke Skywalker on one side and Kylo Ren on the other, and I think that's just to show like the duality. Maybe there is going to be that redemption in the Kylo Ren character, or maybe we'll get that in episode 9. So I think it's a clever poster, but it didn't grab me as many of the previous ones have. But the major news, and at the live stream as well, they tried to pretend like there wasn't going to be a trailer. Of course there was going to be a trailer. And it landed today, the official teaser trailer. As I said, I've talked for like 20 minutes around that figure on the trailer with my speculation, but I haven't really heard many of your in-depth thoughts on the trailer today, Tom. So you have the floor. Tell me what you thought of it.
Yeah. Okay.
Don't piss off the Star Wars fanboys, because there's a lot out there, and I've already incurred the wrath of many.
Yeah, but your reaction was probably more friendly than mine will be.
I'm not talking about my reaction on this. I'm talking about my day one recap. I had a lot of colourful comments about that video, but yeah.
I didn't particularly care for it all that much, and I think the reason is because Star Wars at this point in time is becoming a really bad cash cow.
Well, it always has been, really.
Yeah, but I mean, you never had films once every year. You'd get them like any other standard blockbuster or film. It would be every 2 or 3 years. But with all these movies, it just kind of diminishes how you view it. And sort of going into the trailer, there's a load of stuff in there that really didn't sort of grab my attention. We have Daisy Ridley struggling to act again. Mark Hamill, for the lines he had in the trailer, it was quite good, and he probably will be the best thing about the movie. We've got more space battles, because that's what Star Wars needs, is more space battles. Although,
hey, I agree with that.
Actually, there was one thing we had sort of new designs for ships, or they were ground vehicles, I think.
Are they the ones in that cavalry line with the red smoke?
Yeah, they look like B-wings.
Yeah.
Which was kind of cool, but we need more of that. We just don't need to rehash TIE fighters fighting X-wings and rebel ships destroying Star Destroyers, and it just feels it. You can predict it now, right? It's going to be exactly the same or similar plot points as Empire Strikes Back, and you'll find some big revelation out about Rey and Kylo Ren as well, and how they're related, or someone's Luke's Rey's dad or whatever. It's just going to be some bullshit like that, and you'll come to episode. I'm predicting this right now. This is a full-on prediction for episode 9. Kylo Ren will kill Snoke in similar vein as...
He's going to throw him down another reactor shaft.
Yeah, well, not if he's about 20 foot tall, but he's going to have a redemption story, and it's just you've seen it all before, or it feels like you have. The movie might be great, and I really hope it is, because The Force Awakens really didn't just, it was so bad. And it's a shame to have only 2 good movies out of Star Wars at the moment.
Well, this is a controversial topic between me and you, because you don't particularly care for A New Hope. A New Hope is my least favourite one out of the original trilogy, but I still really, really like it.
Oh no,
it still has that classic quality about it.
It's got George Lucas stamped all over it, and the best of the Star Wars movies was when he had barely any involvement. But yeah, it didn't really sell me. The music seemed really good as well in it.
I don't know if it was a John Williams composed track, because they had the Rey theme in there. It's probably one of the only memorable themes I can think of from Force Awakens. Or the Resistance March theme was pretty good as well.
But it just, I don't know. It didn't really sell me on the idea. It seemed like, it's just been made by a big corporate machine, and you can, like, I think you told me about what one of your friends said when you were speaking to him on the phone earlier today, and he said about that you can just hear the wheels of this big giant corporation spinning to churn out these Star Wars movies every single year. And I agree. I completely 100% agree. And I hate to be a cynic, but there you go. That's my thoughts on the trailer and this new trilogy in general. Even though the next two movies aren't even out yet.
Yeah. It's like kind of what Rey says at the beginning of this trailer. She talks about balance, and I think there needs to be some kind of balance with Star Wars in terms of how much we get, because on the one hand, as a Star Wars fan, it's nice to be spoilt with all of this content. We'll get onto all the animated stuff later on in our recap. But in terms of the movies, the fact that we do get one movie every year to possibly look forward to is nice. But then on the other hand, I think that there's a lot you can gain from waiting for a film and to have that hype be built up. And we still have that hype built up every year, but it does feel diminished somewhat from... I mean, that's why Force Awakens was so huge, because it had been 10 plus years until that next Star Wars film. So of course we were all excited. Anyone would be, but now we've had Rogue One and now we have this. And I'm still going to get excited for Episode 8, regardless of my thoughts on Force Awakens. I did want to talk about that shot of the ships going across with the red smoke coming out. When I first saw that in the trailer, in my trailer reaction, I thought this is going to be some kind of sport on this new planet, maybe something similar to pod racing. I watched the trailer a second time in my reaction and saw that there are AT-AT walkers approaching them, and this is going to be some kind of attack. Now, I did hear rumours there's going to be another snow planet in this movie, and I couldn't tell if it was a desert or a snow planet. So if we're going to have a snow planet with AT-AT walkers in the second entry of the trilogy, with the Resistance fighting against them in kind of snow speeder like, I know they're newly created designs for ships, but in a similar situation, approaching these AT-AT walkers in this line, this is going to be towards my biggest fears of this film, is that are we actually going to break away from that similar restrictive mold that we'd already experienced with the original trilogy?
It just feels, and going back to the trailer, there were some really nice shots, and I mean it does look like a really nicely photographed film from what we saw, and it was edited rather nicely, although it didn't really grab me in the way that it grabbed other people. It was a nicely edited trailer, and it picked out the best bits. And there was that line at the end. What was it? Where Luke says the Jedi must end or whatever.
Yeah.
And you said earlier today as well that would probably be a line. Not that he's turning to the dark side, but he's just really depressed.
Yeah. No, it will be completely taken out of context.
Yeah.
Loads of trailers do that, and obviously our opinions of that line are malleable because the creation of film trailers, you have certain music cues. If it takes on a somber, ominous tone at the end, we're going to discern that from the dialogue that's given. It's going to take on a whole new persona of what he's saying. I've talked about the red outline of the font, and now we have the red poster. It's showing that darker edge to Star Wars. I compared it earlier to the original poster for Return of the Jedi when it was called Revenge of the Jedi, when it was a bright red poster. Symbolises revenge and hate and all the main themes that go through Star Wars. So obviously when you see that scene, you think that maybe Luke is going to tend towards the dark side, but I think it is just going to be the case that he's lost all hope But yeah, no, I do want this film to start doing new things, and I know we've got other panels to talk about, but
yeah. Just one last thing on the trailer as well is and the film in general, even though it's not out yet, we had J.J. Abrams directing the first one, and I'm not a big J.J. fan at all. I think he hasn't really made a good film.
He makes the most consistently average movies I've ever seen.
But we have a really solid writer and director in Ryan Johnson. I was about to call him Rain Johnson. But he's done some of the best episodes of Breaking Bad, and if anyone's capable of making something new and exciting with Star Wars, it's probably him. He obviously wasn't at all what I was expecting when they announced it, but it's interesting to see what other directors bring to the canon or the universe, the multiverse, as it were, rather than just having the stocky old git Lucas directing everything and writing everything and have boring dialogue. But anyway, it's kind of going off completely off topic.
You're giving into your hate of George Lucas right there. No, I mean the original trilogy had 3 different directors throughout. You had oh god, I can't remember the names now. There was George Lucas, there was Irving Kershner, and Richard Marquand, wasn't it, for Return of the Jedi. I've still got it. I still remember stuff. So they're doing the same approach with this trilogy, which I think is the best thing. Although it is really irritating if you do land with that great director, you would like to see them come back because I think having a director. I mean, we see this with Peter Jackson with the likes of Lord of the Rings, where because he films these 3 films back to back, he does generate that connection with everyone, and it does almost become a family on set. And I think that can influence some people's performances, maybe, or approach on set. So it is a shame that they do keep jumping around with directors, but I guess that's to be expected with these kind of films. He also directed Looper as well, which I actually really enjoyed. I think that's a solid movie, and as you mentioned, Breaking Bad. I think he wrote, and I can't remember if he directed, Ozymandias, which is the second to last episode of the final series of Breaking Bad, which is one of the tensest, most perfect hours of television I've ever seen. So I am looking forward to his direction. And Kathleen Kennedy, when we were there last year at Star Wars Celebration, she compared him that he is going to become the next Steven Spielberg, she said, and she repeated that again at the panel today. So it's difficult with these types of things when they have to engage the crowd and say certain things. You don't know how much is genuine or how much is played for the cameras to get that audience. Because I mean, if someone says, this director we've got working on this project, guys, in a few years he's going to be the new Steven Spielberg, that's of course is going to perk everyone's attention up. So, but I think she's probably genuine with it, because he did seem like a really nice guy.
And, I want to just briefly, it feels like I'm moaning an awful lot.
Hey, the people are going to hate you on this one. I'm completely out of the woods on this one.
But it happened last year at Celebration when we were there as well. Is the really forced and cringeworthy panels.
Oh, the humour. The forced humour. Yeah.
It really doesn't... I mean, you're not really there to see people try and like each other. You're there to, see new trailers, see new costumes, see all this... Not to listen to, like, someone waffle on about toys or that they got given and pretending to like them.
Oh, well, we'll get onto the toy line later, but I do want to jump off that topic you just said there about forced humour. So the next panel that we got, which you haven't seen, this followed up the panel of The Last Jedi, was Small Talk with Warwick Davis, which was going in with the pitch idea of he would interview himself and get information across about himself. So it's a complete ego trip of a panel, essentially. But he did it in a way where he'd bring people out from the audience to ask him a question at the front and pretend to be him, and he would be the interviewee. But that forced humour at the start, they were doing the whole thing of, well, we've got a very special guest coming on in a moment, wait, and he was like touching the earpiece like, what's that? Wait, the guest hasn't showed up? Wait, why wasn't I told about this? Like, I was told there was going to be a guest, and this went on for seemingly just endlessly. And no one was laughing in the audience. It was just, you could have heard a pin drop in the audience, so this just wasn't going over well at all. So the people start coming up, and he did have some things at the start saying, like, make sure it's an interesting question. And he did have a series of guidelines. So the first person goes up who, you know, he's never going to listen to this, so I can insult him all I like. It did seem like sort of like Cletus from like Simpsons. Just, he was a bit heftier in size, shall we say. But he goes up, he was like, what's your favourite kind of ice cream? That was his question. Like, and even Warwick Davis said something like, you've queued up all this time, you have the opportunity to talk to me, and that's what you're going to open with. And he says, my favourite's cookie, what is it, like cookie dough or something? And he asked him, and it turns out it's vanilla. Who knew? So Warwick Davis's favourite flavour of ice cream is vanilla. But you could see Warwick Davis was getting increasingly more annoyed at the people he was getting, because let's say the questions weren't that great. But that being said, yesterday when I watched the Ray Park panel, you actually got to see him at the panel last year.
Yeah.
I missed that panel. But I was asking you questions about him earlier, like, was he as crazy and as energetic for you at that panel as he was what I saw on the live stream? And apparently he was exactly that.
Yeah.
But one thing I got from him was, and I really admired him for, was how humble he was and how he was willing to, no matter who it was, any fan, he would high-five them, he would shake their hand, he would ask for their name, and he seemed like a really just approachable, down-to-earth guy. Warwick Davis seemed like, and even some people were going up and asking him a question, and he'd outright ignore it and say, well, we've got this video prepared anyway that's not even going to be a question that you asked, and it's a fun little video vignette. So that did kind of annoy me, because I like to see celebrities, no matter how dumb the question is, you know, that you're there because of the fans. And he wasn't horrible about it or anything like that, but he did seem really passive-aggressive to everyone that approached. That's what I took away from it. I didn't really enjoy this panel, in all honesty. And then we jumped to the next panel, which you did actually see. You have seen
Yes.
the next two panels. We watched these on the live stream just over an hour ago. So it was Heroines of Star Wars, and they were basically talking about female empowerment in the Star Wars franchise overall and the future of that.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things is I haven't actually watched an episode of Clone Wars, or even for a matter of fact, Rebels. It just never really appealed to me. But I kind of I understood what they were trying to get across, was the fact that, you know, it seems like you need more female empowerment in the Star Wars universe, because really, who have you had, like Shmi Skywalker, who like got butchered by Tusken Raiders, or like Yodel?
Don't forget Mon Mothma as well.
and Mon Mothma. But you know, you had a great woman in charge of pretty much an entire rebellion, which was really good. And you know, they were talking about how, when, you know, these voice actors, when they grew up, these female voice actors, they didn't have the sort of toys now that we do of the characters and sort of female figures, which I think, you know, I'm kind of on the fence about this, because, you know, there have been, and I've still got them in the loft, there have been tons of Princess Leia figures and Mon Mothma figures from like the 70s, and, you know, all that stuff was there available, but it might have been just very limited. I mean, there was only a base set of characters that you could choose from. So I think they need to, and it's good that they're doing this, is to expand it. That's not to say that, you know, everything needs to be, you know, female empowerment these days, because one of the things is you can have really good female characters without sort of bashing people over the head with you know, your message about female empowerment, which is completely legitimate, and I agree with it. But, you know, so sometimes characters like Princess Leia, they're quintessential to the entire thing, and they're strong female character, and you get all this stuff. But it just felt kind of a little bit like it was, you know, beating you over the head. But it's fine. It did its job, and, you know, it's a topic I happen to agree with, and feel like we are moving closer to getting more female leads in films, because I mean you had Jyn Erso in Rogue One last year, and then obviously Rey in 2015. But it's good that they're taking the steps to making heroes that girls growing up can aspire to be, that aren't, just sort of your Caitlyn Jenners and your bloody fake models and that, because that's not really an image you really want, and it's especially true of the guys as well. But this was mainly focused on the women of Star Wars. But yeah, I haven't seen an episode of Rebels or Clone Wars, so my knowledge on those two properties or shows is sort of.
Yeah, my knowledge of these two animated series is fairly limited as well. I have watched some of Clone Wars. I'm on season 5. I'm halfway through season 5. There's 6 seasons in total of that, and I haven't watched any of Rebels. I think I watched a couple of episodes to get into it, stopped myself from watching the rest because I wanted to finish off Clone Wars first, because they brought in the character of Ahsoka, who continued into Rebels, and I wanted to finish off Clone Wars first before going into Rebels. Since then, I've had to watch so much TV and other material, not just for the channel, but stuff I've wanted to watch myself. So I will get to this material in good time. But the speakers I've just checked were Ashley Eckstein and Tia Serka, who play the characters of Ahsoka and Sabine, respectively. And I think it is nice to go into this animated world of Star Wars, because Rebels is picking up a very big following. It's obviously season 4's coming. I think season 5 will probably be the last one, because I think it's clearly leading up to A New Hope, and I think they said they wanted to set it a year apart for each one in the lead up. But the whole topic of female empowerment, it's a topic I'm completely fine with. However, I do think in occasions like this where they do keep hitting you over the head with it, sometimes that can bring too much attention to it. It's difficult to word it, which could give a negative light. Like I gave the example earlier when we were watching the stream of characters such as Sarah Connor from Terminator, Ripley from Alien, or even Princess Leia in the original Star Wars trilogy. They show up, they don't draw attention to it, it's just part of their character naturally, and they're fantastic, and you just respect them as characters and you like them as characters. When you have to keep forcibly telling us that this female character is strong, respect her, she's a role, you keep constantly hitting us with that barrage of why we should respect her. That does kind of irritate me a bit. Just let the character breathe, just let that come through naturally in the character without keep telling us about that. But I do agree it is nice. Daisy Ridley came out as well, and they spoke to her. We'll get on to the toy endorsement that they basically bought her out for. And she said she'd been asked this question all the way through the day, when she says, when they asked her, how does it feel to see loads of, little girls dressed as Rey, that you've had that impact on her. And I guess that would be a surreal thing as an actor to go through that and experience that. But it is cool that these new characters are having this impact. They talked about Forces of Destiny as well, which is the new animated series that's coming out this summer, which are going to be, I think it's geared to a much younger audience than the likes of Clone Wars or Rebels, and it's going to be these short little side stories, vignettes that's going to flesh out certain aspects of the plot with these characters. There's Jyn Erso, Ahsoka, Princess Leia and Rey, and Felicity Jones and Daisy Ridley are supplying their voices. And then they bought out the new toy line, and clearly Star Wars, this has been a long-running theme with Star Wars, that toys are at the heart of everything. This is a business after all. This is a product. And they're going to keep bringing those toys out. So they bought out these, I mean, they were fairly decent-sized action figures, I guess. They reminded me of the likes of Bratz dolls, if anyone can remember those, or like Barbie dolls. The sort of completely out of proportion head to the rest of the body. Yeah, and then it descended into this weird toy commercial for like 5 to 10 minutes.
It certainly was. It was just a complete gear shift it was a complete 180, just the wrong direction. And you're talking about sort of female empowerment, and then all of a sudden, look at these new toys we've got. You
can be empowered too if you own the new Ahsoka Tano action figure.
And they bought Daisy, I've got to feel sympathy for Daisy Ridley. She's come to sort of have a bit of a jolly with the fans, and then they bring her out for like 5 seconds to hold a piece of plastic that kids are going to throw in the bin, like.
And it cut to a wide shot of her as well, and she was just kind of sitting there with it like slumped in her hand,
like really did not look interested, disinterested, bored, and just this, and it didn't even. I mean, the original 1970s toys for
the Kenner line.
Yeah, they didn't look a thing like.
Oh God, no!
Like the actors, and it seemed like they were going down that direction with it rather than. But yeah, it was sort of a complete. It was like, what? Oh, okay. So we're going here now. Okay. And then there was the guy who makes Rebels and Rogue
Dave
One.
Filoni.
Dave Filoni. He didn't get a action figure because
well, he's not a character.
Yeah, just bring out a cowboy in a cowboy hat, and
fetch me a McCready action figure from John Carpenter's The Thing. It's pretty much on the money.
It was, but I suppose the segue for that was that one of the actresses or actors, the voice actors, were talking about how they didn't have the toys growing up, and then it sort of segued into this weird sort of advert, and it just didn't gel. It didn't stick, because they obviously wanted to force these things down the audience's throat, and when you get out of this panel, go straight to the stand and pick up these figures.
Only $39.99. Batteries and accessories sold separately. And then they just kind of unceremoniously forced Daisy Ridley off stage to the point where even she was confused. I think she was expecting that. She seemed like she was having a good time. She was enjoying talking about this topic, clearly. And then there was like, right, thanks Daisy for coming out. And she was, am I leaving? And even the voice actors as well were like, why does she have to go? Like, but apparently they would have been talking to the presenter through the earpiece, saying, right, get her away. So clearly she's on to another panel or some other interview, some talk, because it's constantly go for these actors now. But yeah, it was just weird. And then the stream kind of cut out as well, because they were screening. They were screening some kind of animated segment. Was it from Rebels?
Yeah, it was. It was. I think it was a sort of taster of the.
Was it Forces of Destiny?
Yeah, Forces of Destiny, I think. But and then they sort of awkwardly sat there while we watched this live stream going, are the audience at home still watching? Because we can't have them watching this bit of content. I don't understand it. I mean, probably for reasons of it getting shared around, but it was a very awkward way to it, and then they just cut.
Yeah. Well, I was expecting the stream to drop out and then to come back and them to conclude the panel, but it just full on cut out, which then takes us to our last panel of the day, which was Mark Hamill's tribute to Carrie. This was one of the panels after looking at the events for the 4-day weekend that I was most looking forward to. They had a really touching tribute for Carrie Fisher yesterday, with that video tribute, which they played again in this today. They also had John Williams on yesterday, who played the Princess Leia theme and a couple of other Star Wars songs with the Orlando Philharmonic Orchestra. This was a really nice way to end the day, I think. I think it was necessary that Mark Hamill be the one to give this across, because he clearly has many stories, and he's a great storyteller as well. We saw him last year. It was at the panel An Hour with Mark Hamill, I believe it was called.
The guy can just sit down and talk endlessly about nothing really that interesting, but you're still engaged. And it did seem it was very much the case last year when he spoke about all sorts for an hour, and he just and it was the same in this one. He just grabs you, and it was silent whenever he spoke. There was absolutely nobody else talking, and that's something that he can really do and does really well. He absolutely grabs your attention, and you just can't like take your eyes off, or you can't even say anything, because he's almost like a god or whatever.
Well, I'm sure for many people, especially at that panel, he was. I mean, he's a phenomenal actor, great voice actor as well, and he does command that attention of the room. The tribute was very fitting, I think. It was how any tribute should go. It was stories and anecdotes from his life and his experiences with Carrie Fisher on the set of the original Star Wars. And I was surprised at how candid he did get with it, because he talked about that, I don't know if they had a fling, but there was definitely something there. He talked about that at some point there was a romantic interest when they were on set of the original Star Wars. And then he talked about after the films blew up and by the time you get to Empire or Return of the Jedi and the entire cast, he compared it to a band that makes it big and then they kind of do their solo projects. And then, he talked about the ups and downs. So I thought that was nice that he wasn't afraid to talk about those areas. But the biggest, I didn't cry in this. It was very late when we were watching the show, but it was very moving when he did read that speech that he'd prepared, his own personal tribute to her. And
that I think he wrote that like a week after it happened, and you could see it was still a big hit for him as well, because he was at the point of tears, almost. He did start to well up quite a bit, and it's still fresh in the memory, because that happened, God, when was
it was December, I think she died, wasn't it?
And it's still fresh, but it was a really fitting tribute to someone who did seem very kooky and quirky, and someone who really this sort of the Star Wars thing happened really early on in her career, and I think it just sort of stuck. Whereas other actors will move on to projects that they, to get their names out there. She, stuck to it, and it was very much part of her essence as well. And it was a very, very nice tribute. And you had interview or speakers. They showed, or Mark presented some videos from George Lucas, Kathleen Kennedy, and
there was Ryan Johnson at the end. And then Warwick Davis piped up for a little bit. I mean, that sounds harsher than it was supposed to, but yeah, he spoke a bit about his experiences as well, and how he spoke about his time on set, and how she was making sure, because he was very, very young at the time of filming Wicket, and she was getting everything he needs and making sure he was all right, and it's commendable to the sort of person that she was, and of course we're just hearing other people's interpretations of her personality, and we don't know her personally, but we can gather this information and make what I think is a fair judgment of what she was like. And yeah, it was a very, very touching tribute. Yeah, definitely. And I guess the last point I'll say is, in those moments where he was reading the speech, Mark Hamill's just a great showman and he knows how to work the crowd, but in those moments where he was reading that speech, he was clearly putting on... It was definitely a tribute for Carrie Fisher still, but it was for the room for most of it. But in those moments where he was reading that was personal to him, and I think that's why that shone through a lot more. I think that was a nice way to end the day. And I think that pretty much covers day 2 overall. So there was a lot of stuff today. The biggest focus was clearly The Last Jedi, and that's going to be blowing up to millions of hits on YouTube by now, I can only imagine. So that'll do it for our recap on day 2 of Star Wars Celebration Orlando 2017. George will be jumping on a solo recap tomorrow for day 3. I believe tomorrow is going to be news regarding the video game stuff and Star Wars Rebels, so that's kind of fitting because I have been without a modern console for so long. I don't have a PlayStation 4. My PlayStation 3 is broke. I currently have a PS2 hooked up, so at least I can play... the good Star Wars Battlefront games with Star Wars Battlefront and Battlefront 2.
Yeah.
But the trailer has leaked. Well, I think it's officially been released now for Battlefront 2, and they're going to be talking about Season 4 of Rebels. So as I said, George will be jumping on a video for that tomorrow, and then me and George will be jumping on a joint video to recap the final day of Star Wars Celebration with Day 4. So be sure to hit that subscribe button. It's the best way to keep updated with all of our content, and make sure you hit that bell icon as well at the side of the subscribe button, which will give you a notification every time we put some new content out. There'll be more movie reviews coming up this week, as I said, the Star Wars Celebration content as well, and more trailer reactions for me as and when trailers come out. So until next time, thanks for listening.